You're watching UnrealEntGaming. This is Gohan from Dragon Ball Z. You want to see me turn Super Saiyan? Or should I take it to the next level? I'm also the narrator, too. Next time on Dragon Ball Z, make sure and smash subscribe to UnrealEntGaming.
With Dragon Ball Super now heading into a brand new direction by introducing a brand new arc following the events of the Galactic Patrol prisoner story, there have been many fans within the Dragon Ball community that have been seemingly begging the question on the overall direction of Uub and what exactly Toyotaro is going to be doing in terms of introducing Uub in the Dragon Ball Super story and having to make him a definitive character now that Goku and Vegeta and the Daikaio, along with so many people that were presently there to battle against planet Moro, are aware of this mysterious god key that was passed on to Goku in giving him the power needed to defeat Moro. The question going forward is what exactly is Uub's potential in the Dragon Ball Super story, and how far are we going to go before having to finally see Goku take Uub under his wing in perfecting him as a fighter as Dragon Ball Super continues. As once more before we begin, if of course you guys are new to the channel and want to be kept up to date with everything in regards to Dragon Ball, then I do encourage you guys to go on ahead and smash that subscribe button, as well as turning on all notifications by clicking on the bell icon to never miss a single update video on the channel, as well as giving this video a big fat thumbs up by slapping that like button down below if you guys are simply stoked, ready, and excited to see what's about to happen in this upcoming story within Dragon Ball Super. Because joining me here today to discuss Uub's potential is my good friend and Dragon Ball YouTuber Emosh, and it's interesting because Uub's potential in Dragon Ball Super manga chapter number 66 was inconceivable, to the point where a lot of people now acknowledge the fact that Uub has tremendous potential within this overall franchise. However, what exactly is his fate going to be as, of course, the story continues? Now, Emosh, I want to get your thoughts first and foremost on the overall direction on what they can do with Uub's character, and if you believe that this is actually the best possible time to have Uub enter the fray in becoming a main part, or at least a main figure within the show, and if so, does this mean that it's likely for us to get into the ending of Z and move past that as the story continues?
I'm not really sure what the fascination with End of Z is, because the End of Z is essentially Goku leaving. So at this point, you gotta ask yourself, well, what's left for Goku, right? There's no actual enemy that we can actually think of to oppose Goku to the point where it would push him beyond his current limitations, right? Though that is what we expect, but it's not really our job or place to kind of, figure that part out. That's Toyo's job, like Heroes and Company. So what you have to look at now is that, okay, well, the next best thing would be Uub, simply because of his potential, simply because of the power that I imagine in the next chapter, or the next upcoming chapters, roughly, that Goku is going to remember the conversation he had with Dende, whether it's through him remembering it, or whether it's through Dende reminding Goku that, hey, it was Uub this whole time, and then Goku's going to remember that conversation he had with Dende and the conversation he had with Merus to put two and two together to say, well, wow, like, I've never felt strength like that before, and I've never felt that amount of power before, or any reference of that nature kind of puts Uub in a position to where he becomes Goku's student, right? So if you don't have an enemy that can, based on potential alone, that can push Goku beyond his limitations, the next best thing is you give Goku someone to train, or someone to teach, right? Someone to spend time with. And right now, Goku needs to be able to fight beings with that level of god power, because it substantiates the whole, like, Master Ultra Instinct narrative. But I do think, and I do firmly believe that the recent chapter was Uub's definitive introduction into the series for sure. I mean, the End of Z was good for Dragon Ball Z because it was the End of Z. That's it. That's why it was good. But, if you want to bring the End of Z into Super, it's like, well, would they treat that as the end of Super as well? Right? Would that be the end of the story, right? So obviously that wouldn't be the case. So if that's the case, then we don't really see Goku training with Uub, and it's just like some time skip, right? And then we have like the theoretical events of GT, for example, which misses a lot of content because we don't know what happened over the course. All we got is a time skip, and people want to know what's happening in between that, right? So that's something to really consider when we talk about End of Z. I'm not too fond of the idea, but I do think that expanding on Uub now is a good opportunity for the character, simply because of what he did in the recent chapter. He was a necessity. His power was a necessity into defeating Moro, who was no joke at this point. So, and as far as Goku's character, I imagine that I figured that he may want to bring back Merus in some way, shape, or form. And that's another possibility. But I think if we were to get Uub instead, and that Goku were to take an interest in Uub instead, that's another, it continues Goku's story, but then it leaves everyone else up in the air. So for example, like, will Goku take Uub to Beerus' planet to train there, or will Goku take Uub and personally train him himself, like in a different location, maybe in his village or somewhere like that? Like, will he live with Uub in his village the same way he did at the end of the Z, or will there be like a different, perspective or narrative perspective here? And if that's the case, then okay, well, if they're not going to Beerus' planet, etc., then what's left for Vegeta? And at this point, you have to ask yourself, well, basically, whatever decision Goku makes will ultimately affect everyone else's decision, because that tends to be the trend of how things go here. So if Goku's doing something with someone else, then what does Vegeta do, right? So it's like a chain reaction. So and that's been a steady narrative for Dragon Ball, especially Dragon Ball Super, for quite some time now. So if Goku does something, it affects everyone else. If Vegeta does something, it's for a specific reason. It's usually in reaction to what Goku is doing, with the exception of like his daughter being born. But everything else we've seen Vegeta do for the most part, or we've seen major characters do for the most part, has been in response to something that Goku has done. So we'll see.
I think it's interesting only because there's so much you can actually do with the overall narrative of bringing Uub in. Does he become a Z fighter? Does Goku, like you said, bring him to Beerus' planet to train, which I think would be ideal if you want to change things up and not bring him to the lookout, and kind of do the same thing you've done with GT by having them train on the lookout. But I think that with that introduction alone, you can ultimately kind of pass that along in having Uub become Goku's definitive protege, and you can kind of have that be more explored as the story continues. But do you think that this is going to add on to why Goku wants to train Uub so badly, because he sees that his massive potential comes from the Daikaio's power and the fact that he does have a portion of that God Ki within him? And let's just say if they do, then how does this affect the overall tone of the show, considering the fact that, again, all of this takes place right before the end of Dragon Ball Z and Goku actually going off to train Uub? Because, like you said, that was the definitive end of Dragon Ball Z, but I think that Dragon Ball Super doesn't seem to have somewhat of a ceiling to it, or a cap that's going to be placed in sealing off the show yet. I think that for Toei and Shueisha, there's so much more content left to explore that they could do one of two things: either go into the end of Z or go into a direction to where Dragon Ball Super ends. So do you think that because of what we've seen go down with Moro, it's going to add on to why Goku wants to train Uub? And if it does, then how does that just basically change up the narrative of the show, considering that Goku now knows that this kid has God Ki within him, so it only piques his interest now to train him only because of that narrative alone?
So in the manga, when Dende tells Goku or suggests for Goku to take Uub under his wing, Goku denies it at first. He says, why? It's not my style, right? It's not his style to take people under his wing, right? So it's like, well, you have to ask yourself, well, what about Gohan? Well, that's just it doesn't really count, but it's not his style to take people under his wing, right? So it's like, it's his style for him to learn from others and to learn through like hardships and difficulties and things of that nature, right? That's his style. And so suddenly that would be one character change, right? Even though it's stated multiple times that Goku's character is never going to change, but that is a character change if that does, if that does come true, right? So if he takes Uub under his wing, well, I mean, the incentive is that based on his potential, Goku needs strong people to keep him in shape, to keep him on his toes, right? And, coincidentally, Goku training someone else and teaching someone else other things puts him in a position to grow as well as a character. So it all comes down to whether or not they're going to, give Goku a different perspective on things. If he is going to change, even if it's a little change in Goku can go a long way. So it's difficult to really gauge what the incentive would be other than what Dende told, Goku. And at that point, you're already on your way towards Goku changing as a character, because he gets put in the position of being a teacher rather than a student. And Goku tends to always be in the position of being a student, right? So this is true like in every arc. So almost every arc, if not every arc. So it was true in this arc. It was true in the Tournament of Power, right? It was true to some extent in Battle of Gods. It was true in ROF as well, for letting his guard down, things of that nature. Universe 6 tournament. Yeah, so practically every arc, Goku has been put in a position where he's had to learn things. The issue for Goku has always been that even though he's learned these things, he tends to make the same mistakes because of whatever reasoning, which, defeats the purpose of learning that mistake, right? And defeats the purpose of giving people the impression that said character is developing. So there's also that factor that if Goku is going to be Uub's master, then will Uub be like Goku's shadow in the sense where he's like another Goku, And if that's the case, that's really bad. So we know at the end of Z, Goku does tell Uub that, like there may come a time where he'll be in the position of being the one to protect the Earth and things of that nature and taking his place, right? So it's like, that was kind of the narrative there. The story never really continued. Like in GT, I mean, you brought up GT. GT doesn't really count. It's just a lot of assumptions, a lot of what ifs, and a lot of just like random stuff, right? But the biggest thing there was a big time skip there. So, and then when Uub does come into like GT and we get Majup and stuff, things of that nature, he's like garbage, he's useless, right? But in this, it's really different because even though he didn't fight Moro per se, he was definitely a key to helping to defeat him, right? So it was the Daikaino, things of that nature. So when you consider those things, it's a good way to introduce him. But if the end result is the same as like Z or GT, for example, then Uub is still ultimately useless. What it comes down to is Toyotaro. Is he going to reference a lot of things that we've gotten before again? Things that worked once upon a time because we were still in the process of getting to know these characters and watch them grow and develop? And if that's going to be the case, then it's not going to turn out so well because it tends to never really turn out so well for Toyo, especially. So, and I know it comes across like me hating Toyo and all this other stuff, and I just don't like his sense of dialogue or his sense of progression at all. I think this chapter 66, the way they ended this arc was probably the ideal ending because it felt like everybody had a role to play, which is good, which is always good. Because when you do that, there's less of a need for explaining specific plot points and routes that you choose to take. But if it's one character and one character does something that's just weird, it's like, wait, what? What's happening, right? You end up having to kind of explain that. But when you use teamwork and you utilize multiple characters, you have to do less of that. But again, sometimes it just feels like Toyo's afraid to be like creative, even when he uses references from the past. He tries too hard to make them the exact same thing, which makes it boring. So for example, if everybody's excited for Uub right now, not everybody, but a lot of people are excited to see what he has to offer. Will Goku finally train him, so on and so forth? Will we get that? Maybe, because it's a reference. Will it be executed the same way? That's also an issue, right? Because if it's executed the same way, then Uub is useless still. So it's really up in the air. There's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of like things to consider. And I wouldn't mind Toyo trying to sacrifice references for giving me something new and fresh. I think that's what Dragon Ball Super needs right now. And I think that's what holds Dragon Ball Super back in comparison to other manga, for example. So yeah,
I think that's what makes it interesting because we really don't know as to what the direction is going to be. For example, for those that don't remember, back during the Universe 6 tournament, it was actually referenced in the manga that Vegeta had brought up Uub to Goku and asking him, hey, didn't we have some kid actually be reborn, through the essence of Kid Buu? And Goku's like, no, he's still too young. So this was alluded way back in the day, and even during the Tournament of Power in the manga, of course, when then they had told Goku about him. So I just can't wait to see how this is going to be animated, because I think that that's really going to set the tone for how the show is going to be paced. But I think that with Uub now being a factor, there's no doubt that I think Goku's going to want to take interest in him, only because of the key that he had given to him that was of divine nature. And even on the ship with Merus, when Merus was explaining that the Daikaio's powers had been separated and it had been brought back and reincarnated into Uub, I think that Goku now has more of an interest as to why he should train this kid. And it's interesting that you bring up the dynamic of Goku being a teacher, because Goku had been teaching Caulifla, for example, during the Tournament of Power. He had been teaching Broly, he had been teaching Gohan, and we saw how he taught Uub at the end of Z. But do you personally believe that, in your opinion, Uub's potential scales above anyone we've ever seen in Dragon Ball Super before, including Broly? And how strong do you think Uub can potentially be after seeing what he did in giving Goku the power to defeat Moro in reactivating the powers of Ultra Instinct?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So first, as far as like potential, like when you talk about Broly and things of that nature, Broly's grown up already, right? Can you train him? Can you teach him things? Sure. Does he have a lot of potential? Sure. Uub is like 5 years old, to my knowledge, at the time of the manga. Maybe I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section. So he's like a fresh, clean slate. He's very malleable. Goku can teach and showcase a lot of things to him. There's the difference already. Already that makes a substantial and drastic difference as to the future of said character, right? So that's something to really consider. So that's why Broly and Uub are not the same in that instance. They're both marketable. I'd argue Broly is a lot more marketable, so they'd probably expand on him more. I mean, we got 3 movies from him in Z, but he was a bad guy. In this sense, they could always bring him back another 2 more times just to carry on with the said tradition, right? They don't have to, like with Koyama, but they could just carry on with that kind of concept for said tradition. Whether it's through like an anime return, whether it's through manga references, I don't know, don't really care. But the point is that there are characters being shoved in the closet for God knows for what reason. And the only reason we can assume at that point is that they'll make some cameo entrances every now and then, right? We know in the Broly movie, Goku asks to let him come and fight Broly every once in a while. And, you know, the reason Goku wants to fight Broly is because when he fought Broly at his strongest, which would be like full power Super Saiyan when he fought Gogeta, he was probably above Beerus, right? The question is now, that's like Broly in his berserk state when he has absolutely no control. Can Broly still do that? I'm not suggesting that he can't turn Super Saiyan, but can he get back to that state, right? To the state that intrigued Goku to want to be able to fight him to begin with. And if he can't, then suddenly Broly starts to lose some value. But again, that narrative gets, that position and that pressure gets placed on Goku, who already told Dende he doesn't want to train Uub because it's not his style. So will he take Broly on too? Will he teach Broly a few things? And that's 2 characters that he has to show things to, all for the sake of what? For having strong people to train and fight against. But the issue is that you also end up losing the villain factor. And the villain factor is typically what tends to push Goku into a corner to want to fight people and to want to go above 100%. Right? Goku with his back against the wall is typically the best Goku that we'll see because he goes all out. He has a bad habit of holding back, mainly because he, like, especially if he's acquainted with the opposition, right? Like with Hit, like with Vegeta, think about like literally anytime with Vegeta, right? So these are good examples. So and when he gets to know these characters, he tends to hold back. He tends to kind of like not go all out because he doesn't really view them as an actual threat. They don't have that villain/threat factor to push Goku beyond his limits, in spite of how strong they are. So how strong they are doesn't matter. It's whether or not they can actually showcase that again. So that's Broly. As far as Uub, he scales very high. So like his god power or whatever, it scales very high. Mainly because that we know now, based on this chapter, that Goku and Vegeta can sense God Ki, right? And the statement made by Vegeta is it's in reference to an amount of something. So he says, but how? This ridiculous amount. And sure, I guess you can argue, well, maybe Vegeta thought that because of the size of it, but it's doesn't really change the argument ultimately. First and foremost, because they can sense God Ki, they don't even think it's Beerus, right? So there's that. And we do know that Genki or things of that nature, when she is applied in this fashion, it tends to scale higher, but it scales higher when it's applied to something, right? So in this instance, they didn't use the energy to throw it at Moro to defeat him. They used that energy to throw it onto Goku, and it gives him a massive amp. And that massive amp was able to completely overwhelm a Moro who absorbed Merus already, who was continuously absorbing Vegeta and people on the planet, people on the ground throughout the course of the chapter, which would include UI Goku, by the way, right? There's nothing to suggest that Goku didn't have his energy drained as well. We can actually see Goku getting weaker as Moro continues to get stronger in the chapter. Whis references how his powers continuing to swell. Vegeta references how Moro is continuously stripping him, which would include everybody else on the ground, including Goku when he was on the ground, of their energy faster than he can strip it back out with Force Spirit Vision. So there's multiple visual and narrative indications to suggest that Goku was getting weakened over time, which is why he couldn't break through Moro at the end, which is typical for it's typical plot references, right? It's typical plot wank. And then Goku, he doubts himself, right? And I've noticed some people suggesting that, well, Goku says he doesn't have enough God power, but you have to look at all the statements made, right? So the first statement that he makes is, Merus did it, so why can't I? When you look at that sentence, right, first, and then apply the second statement, which is, I guess he doesn't have enough God power, Goku's one, he's doubting himself, right? Two, it doesn't seem like he notices that his energy is being drained up until it's actually drained, right? That his power was getting sucked away, which is why he powers down. And two, the first part is that you have to look at the first statement. Merus did it, so why can't I? So Merus did it against a weaker Moro. And Goku, that statement alone is like he's saying, Merus did it, so why can't I? Thus placing himself above Merus definitively, right? Through a statement feat. Then you look at Moro and how 7-3's copy ability works. He copies you at your full power. That's already established. So he would copy Merus at his full power. So this is a Moro with Merus, with the Earth energy, like he's absorbing people in densely populated areas. And then you have the fact that he absorbed Goku not just once but twice. So he's absorbing UI Goku already, and then he ends up absorbing Blue Goku, who just got, chi provided to him from Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Tien, Chaozu, and Yamcha. Granted that their energy was also being drained while they were giving it to while they were trying to accumulate it for Goku, but at the same time, they thought that would be enough for Goku to at least go UI. He doesn't even go like UI Omen. He doesn't even he just goes straight to blue. And then Moro saps him again. So Uub comes in just with his energy alone, with his god power alone, and is able to take Goku from 0% to completely overwhelm a Moro who has Goku in his grasp, who is constantly absorbing energy. So now he negs the energy absorption and completely overwhelms that Moro through strength feats, and then one-shots Moro. So Goku attacking the crystal isn't necessarily the feat, it's the fact that he's able to completely overwhelm him with his chi alone. And that chi, we get that chi construct, which is something that Goku didn't do before, which implies that Goku couldn't do it before because he was actually questioning how he could get to Moro's crystal to begin with, which implies that he could never gigantify himself, which means that the energy provided to him substantiates the idea that was a lot of energy being provided to him. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, yeah, Uub has a lot of potential just based on that. So, that's pretty much how you would look at it. I mean, as for how strong he is, it doesn't really matter because he probably can't fight people anyway. He's probably like really shit at fighting, but it's already established that Uub himself is unaware as to how great he is. So it's just a matter of, who ends up training him, who ends up showing him the ropes.
I think honestly a lot of us are just waiting to see what Goku's going to do, and I think there's no question in my mind that he is going to take Uub under his wing. But then again, it's like he's been wanting to promise and teach people like Caulifla and Broly and Gohan and now Uub, and I think that there's a lot of people that, he needs to, I guess, try to make way for in order to take up one student. I think that the best student he could take up is Uub, because if he knows that he has this god power within him, then he can just ultimately train him to use this properly. But in the end, in the comment section below, we want to get your thoughts on Uub's direction, Uub's narrative, if you guys believe that we're going to be entering the end of Z, if you guys believe that we're going to go beyond that and enter a brand new kind of retcon story after this is all said and done with GT. Not necessarily in the sense of where it actually is GT, but more or less seeing Goku train Uub and seeing all of these events play out. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for your time. If, of course, you guys are new to the channel, then I do encourage you guys to smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications to never miss a single video on the channel, as well as giving this video a big fat thumbs up by slapping that like button down below. Tune back in for the next video. Make sure you guys also check out and subscribe to Emosh's channel. I will leave his Twitter and his YouTube channel located down in the description box below, and we'll be seeing you all in the next video. Take it easy, guys, and have a great day. Peace. And the quick little reminder before you guys go, if you guys are unaware, I do have a second gaming channel located down in the description box below, so be sure to head on over to Unreal Royale and hit that subscribe button along with turning on all notifications, as to there, you guys will find all different kinds of gaming content that you will not get to find on UnrealEntGaming, titles and video games such as Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, Gears of War, Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, Dragon Ball Z Legends, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, Minecraft, Blair Witch, and many other retro games on that channel. So if you guys are into gaming, then make sure you guys subscribe over on Unreal Royale. I want to thank you all so much for your time, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
This is the Galactic Emperor of the Universe, and of course I'm here to tell you to subscribe to UnrealEntGaming.
Also follow UnrealEntGaming on these social media platforms to stay connected at all times. And if you don't, then very soon you will all be dead! Oh, did someone say UnrealEntGaming? Oh my god.
The fuck, Zarbon? Put on some clothes!
Well, why don't you put on any clothes?
What? I don't need clothes. Jesus Christ, that's huge! What, Broly?
Frieza.
Uh-oh.
Prepare to die!
But once you get video, lots of likes, or Bill will turn you into chocolate! Vados, get over here! Tell these mortals that I'm the biggest UnrealEntGaming fan. This is my moment. I'm a part of his notification squad. Universe 7 can have all the fun. I just want the food.
And don't forget to leave a comment on this video. Show some love for the best community on YouTube.
Kakarot!